My fiancée invited her ex to the wedding to humiliate me and called it a joke. If someone had told me a year ago that I'd cancel my wedding in front of 120 guests and walk out with my head held high while my fiancée stood there humiliated, I would have laughed. But sometimes, the people we trust the most are the ones holding the knife. Her name was Leah. We met at a mutual friend's birthday, on a rooftop bar in downtown Chicago, a place with fancy cocktails and twinkling lights that made everything feel magical. She had a laugh that could turn heads and a confidence that bordered on reckless. A week later, we were inseparable. Leah thrived on attention, not just the quiet kind, but the kind that fills rooms. Her idea of fun often blurred the line between playful and cruel. When I proposed to her during a weekend trip to the Smoky Mountains under the stars in silence, she laughed, really laughed, and asked, "Are you serious? Or is this part of the joke?" before finally saying yes. Later, she told everyone it was a test to see if I'd still do it at my birthday dinner. She even hired a singing telegram in a diaper to prank me in front of my coworkers. When I lost my job during a company downsizing, she posted a picture of herself crying on TikTok with the caption, "My fiancé is now broke. Sugar mommy arc unlocked." I told myself it was just her way of coping, that maybe, just maybe, I was being too sensitive. But some people don't joke. Some just hide knives behind their smiles. They say wedding nerves are normal, but mine didn't feel like nerves. They felt like alarm bells. A week before the ceremony, I found myself lying awake at 3 a.m., staring at the ceiling, counting red flags that I had buried under excuses. Leah was still Leah, charming, loud, always laughing, but something in her smile started to feel off, like she knew something I didn't. At the rehearsal dinner, her bridesmaids were giggling in that way women do when there's a secret. One of them, a girl named Tasha, leaned in and whispered with a wink, "Hope you're ready for a big surprise on the big day." I smiled politely, laughed, but something about the way she said surprise made the hairs on my neck stand up. That night, I called my best friend David. He's a lawyer and the only person who had seen me at my worst and still picks up the phone without hesitation. I didn't tell him everything, but I had a feeling Leah was planning something grand. Maybe not cruel, but definitely theatrical. And I no longer trusted her definition of boundaries. David came up with an idea. Let's draft a fake prenuptial agreement. Nothing legally binding, just a paper trail. Something about public humiliation voiding any financial agreements. If she was planning a prank, maybe this would scare her. I laughed at first, but then I said, "Do it." The next day, we drafted it. It was tucked in a manila folder inside my desk, labeled just in case, because deep down, I knew I'd need it. The morning of the wedding was perfect. Too perfect. The venue was a vineyard just outside the city. Green rows stretching into the horizon, sunlight weaving through the trees, and soft classical music filling the air as the guests arrived. Leah had chosen every detail herself, the flower arrangements, the string quartet, the blush pink color scheme. Everyone kept saying how magical it felt. My parents were there, and beaming friends had flown in from 3 states. Even Leah's father, whom she barely spoke to, had shown up, standing stiffly in the back, sipping champagne. Everyone told me how lucky I was, how great I looked, how calm I seemed. But I kept glancing at the horizon, waiting for that perfect moment to crack. The ceremony was set to begin at 5 o'clock. Leah asked for the microphone. "Just a little surprise before we start," she chirped, her voice amplified across the garden. I turned to look at her, radiant in her dress, veil fluttering in the breeze, eyes sparkling. But there was something else there too. That glint I'd seen before mischief. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said, grinning, "you've all met James, my very serious, very dependable groom." A few chuckles rippled through the crowd. But before I say I do, I thought it might be fun to take a quick walk down memory lane. Then, out walked Marcus, her ex, dressed in a tux, holding a mic, smirking like he owned the world. "Hey everyone," he said smoothly, "Leah and I dated for 2 years. And well," she added, "it'd be fun if I shared a few stories." The guests awkwardly laughed. I couldn't laugh. Marcus launched into an exaggerated retelling of their wildest night. It wasn't graphic, but it was suggestive enough to turn polite smiles into frowns. He mimicked our first date and hinted at unfinished business. All the while, Leah clapped her hands and giggled behind him. The air turned cold. My mother looked horrified. Her bridesmaids looked confused as I turned to Leah and saw a stranger. This was her big joke. She thought this was funny. And that's when everything changed. I didn't flinch. I didn't shout. I didn't storm off. Instead, I smiled. The kind of smile that says, You really thought I didn't see this coming? As Marcus wrapped up his little performance, I stepped forward, took the mic from his hand, and turned to face the guests. My voice was calm, steady. Thank you, Marcus. That was enlightening. And thank you, Leia, for confirming what my instincts have been screaming for weeks. A ripple of silence. Leia's grin faltered. I wasn't sure what you were planning, I continued, pulling a folder from inside my jacket, but just in case, I brought this. I opened it and held up the document. This, I said, is a non-legally binding prenup draft. Just a little exercise I did with my lawyer. I pointed to paragraph 3, subsection B. Should the bride engage in any act of intentional public humiliation directed at the groom on or before the wedding day, all financial promises and obligations are considered null and void. Gasps. Eyes widened. Cameras stopped recording. Silence. I looked straight at her. Leia, the wedding's off. Before she could speak, I nodded to the DJ. The opening notes of Hit the Road Jack blasted through the speakers, drowning out whatever excuse she tried to make. I walked down the aisle alone, the way I came in. But this time, I was free. The music blared louder than her protests. Hit the Road, Jack, echoed across the vineyard like a judgment. At first, no one moved. Then, a sharp, awkward snort from one of my groomsmen broke the tension like glass. A few guests nervously chuckled. Some stood in stunned silence, phones half raised. Others exchanged glances and quietly gathered their things to leave. Leia stood frozen near the altar, makeup perfect, expression ruined. Her bouquet slipped from her hands and landed with a dull thud on the wooden deck. I turned and walked away. My parents followed. David, my best man, gave a small nod to the crowd like he was closing a curtain on a bad show. A few of Leia's bridesmaids stood awkwardly to the side, caught between loyalty and disbelief. Her mother covered her mouth. Her father just shook his head. Marcus? Gone. Disappeared like a cockroach when the lights come on. No goodbye. No bravado. Just gone. As I stepped into the car, I didn't feel victorious. Not yet. Just clarity, like I'd finally walked out of someone else's dream and back into my own life. I didn't look back. She made a show, but I ended it. That night, my phone had over 50 unread messages, all from Leia. At first, she tried to play it off. It was just a joke. Babe, you overreacted. Then came the guilt trips. You embarrassed me in front of everyone. Then the blame. You humiliated me. You planned this. She never once said sorry. I didn't respond. Not a word. By morning, I blocked her number. But the real blow came 2 days later, courtesy of David, my best friend and secret weapon. Turns out, he'd been quietly collecting receipts ever since that surprise at the rehearsal dinner. Screenshots. Group chat messages from Leia's bridesmaids. They had made a private betting pool. Will he cry? Think he'll run? One of them even wrote, Leia's going to break the internet with this one. LOL. David posted the screenshots online with the caption, here's what the joke really looked like. It went viral by lunch. Thousands of comments. Hundreds of shares. And something unexpected happened. People took my side. Strangers, former classmates, even wedding guests. Messages poured in. You dodged a bullet. She played stupid games and got the prize. You handled it like a king. For once, the internet didn't tear someone down. It lifted me up. As for Leia, well, her silence said enough. A week later, there was a knock at my door. I knew it was her before I even looked through the peephole. Leia stood there, no makeup, hair pulled back, swollen eyes like she hadn't slept in days. She held something in her hands. A letter? A speech? But her face said everything. Regret. Panic. Desperation. James, please, she whispered, voice trembling. Can I just explain? Just for a minute. I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped inside for a moment and came back with a small ivory envelope. I placed it gently in her hands. She opened it right there on the porch. Inside was a copy of the wedding rehearsal invitation from a week ago. Same font, same layout, except this one had been edited. Across the middle, in bold black ink, were the words, now we're even. Leia's lips parted, like she wanted to say something clever, something redeeming. But I was already closing the door. No shouting, no explanation, just the soft click of the lock turning. She came to reclaim her story. I gave her an ending instead. In the weeks that followed, Leia's world unraveled faster than anyone expected. Her bridesmaids, those who laughed with her, quietly distanced themselves. A few even publicly apologized, saying they had no idea it would go that far. Her office, a trendy marketing firm that thrived on public image, put her on indefinite leave, then terminated her quietly the next month. No one wanted to be associated with the viral wedding prank girl. As for Marcus, he disappeared like smoke, deleted his socials, stopped answering her messages. Turns out even attention seekers have limits. Leia was left with nothing but a wedding dress she never wore and a reputation that wouldn't wash clean. And me? I healed. Not overnight, but slowly. With good people around me. Quiet mornings that didn't start with chaos. I moved out of the apartment we once shared and into a house with a backyard and peace. 6 months later, I met someone new. Her name's Emma. She doesn't do grand gestures or surprises. Just steady kindness and warm coffee in the mornings. And that's enough. Sometimes we talk about trust, about second chances. But mostly we live quietly, happily, and on our own terms. Leia wanted to make a show. She did. But in the end, the show became her downfall.